Our This Week in XR podcast is sponsored by our friends at Zapper, the world's leading augmented reality platform and creative studio, with over 11 years of experience working with the world's biggest brands through Zapper Creative Studio. Zapper also has an award-winning web AR platform, ZapWorks, that lets you create your own mobile AR magic. Finally, check out their Zap Box, the most affordable mixed reality headset on the planet. Start creating AR over at zap.works or talk to them about your next AR project at zapper.com. For the AIXR podcast, it's Friday, July 17th,
Morning.
2026. Good morning, guys. So Irena Cronin is our guest today. Irena is the CEO of a consulting firm that specializes in AI and XR, Infinite Retina. You all know her. She's been in the industry more than a dozen years.
Yeah, well, Irena's OG.
We have, so it'll be great to catch up with her in a little while.
So,
Yes.
she's got good insights.
Wasn't she like partners with
absolutely
Robert
right.
Scoble
And-
at some point or something?
Yes.
Okay. There we
Yes. She is partners with Scoble. Scoble and I had a really interesting conversation recently about VR. And I kind of blamed him because his book was so influential to me in 2016 when I read it. But now you look back on it and honestly on my book and you're like, what happened? Like it just didn't happen. You know, and the premise was, oh, well, when VR has this, that'll happen. When VR has that, that'll happen.
It happened. It just happened.
Well,
it
we
just
had a
happened
false-
completely
we had
differently
a false
than a lot of
positive.
people predicted.
It will eventually happen in some form over the next couple decades. By the way, the Scoble wearing Google Glass in the shower
That's right.
is
Well-
a forever iconic meme for all time.
Yes. Bob has been an influencer in the tech industry since before I was in the tech industry, which is going back to the 90s. I mean, he really, you want to talk about an OG. But let's get to the news. We've got an awesome news week, and I want to leave time for it because OpenAI gets its hand caught in the cookie jar of Apple's IP on the eve of their IPO and the announcement of Yoni Ive's hardware, which they're accused of basically stealing their hardware IP for their new device.
All I can say,
I mean,
Rony,
it's a
is
shocking
Sam
allegation.
Altman, baby. Sam Altman.
Hey, let's deconstruct this for a second. How much IP theft has been going on between these big tech companies for how many decades?
Right.
But so is it like, did he go above the baseline level of acceptable theft? Because they're poaching each other's employees, and those employees are not supposed to take trade secrets. They all sign employment agreements, but they're all singing like canaries once they get into, the company. So it's really, I saw this happen firsthand. Some of our, really good folks at Magic Leap were poached by some big companies, and then things that look eerily similar begin to show up. And you just have you can't exactly prove 100% that the employee spilled the beans, but why did they get hired? What did they do behind the scenes? And then when dozens of them get hired, they're just like recreating your trade secrets. So, I mean, the Silicon Valley is built on that to some extent. So is Sam part of the regular norm, or did he spike so high above the norm of IP theft that it's an extraordinary level of IP theft that they're yelling about right now?
I think this is a cultural moment more than a technical moment. This is a very good definition of what has been happening in the world with the mentality of cheating becoming normalized and mainstream and accepted in levels that I don't think any generation has ever seen.
Cheating and
we've-
stealing and,
Yeah.
and disrespect for copyrights and patents
Yeah.
and trade secrets and know-how and
Yeah.
integrity and like all of that, right? It's
Yeah,
just,
it-
but it's not just this, right? It seems to be the AGI movement feels they have like some, eminent domain rights over your intellectual property.
Yeah.
Like that whole field feels like it just has rights to anything that ever was created by humanity and it's there somehow. Like, is that the root cause, or is there something worse that like cheating, stealing, lying, not playing by the rules is how you make it?
Well, haven't big tech companies been manipulating M&A to get intelligence on competitors as well as companies with whom they're in co-opetition to get access to their IP. I remember a story about an XR company that was in serious conversations with Apple, or perhaps it was Google, and they really dug into the hood. They sent engineers, they had meetings, they wanted to understand the technology on a very deep basis. The smaller company, of course, cooperated, but when the deal never happened, away walks the mega scaler with that intellectual property, or at least some pretty
Apple's
deep
known for
insight
something
into
called
it.
Sherlocking. They look
Yeah.
at your company under supposed M&A.
Right.
They sign, non-disclosures, and they comb you up and down, and then supposed M&A never happens. And a bunch of startups have been through this, where they exposed everything they did. A rare number get acquired, but a lot don't. And they've shared everything with some big hyperscaler, Apple included, but not only. And those companies almost have no recourse, because it's like, so sue me. Yes, I'm violating patents. Sue me. I own 5 patent law firms. We have 10,000 attorneys. What are you going to do?
Yeah,
I mean, and there's little poor companies, they feel helpless. They're just being overrun by
Right.
these overlords.
There's
That is the.
But because nobody has $1 million in
Look, I
10
fought
years to
people
take
at
them on.
Mako. We fought people at Magic Leap in IP lawsuits. What's interesting is that Mako, we won all of our IP lawsuits. Like, it was interesting. At that time, we went up against some really big companies and won. And it actually made me feel that the United States Patent Office and Copyright Office was upholding the little guy, and you could protect yourself. That feels less so now. I don't know what's changed in U.S. law, but I think this is a legal copyright patent office issue. Are they going to protect patents and copyrights and trade secrets or not? Like, which way is the government going? Because if there was a feeling that if you steal, you will lose in court. And by the way, Apple's testing this, right? I'm actually glad to see this happen. I'd actually like to see Apple win, because smaller companies, you have no recourse. The law doesn't protect you. You just get run over by big companies. You have no recourse. The law is supposed to protect, the little guy inventing, and you can't just steal their work. That is the idea of the courts and the rule of law. So this is an interesting thing to see. Can the courts uphold the rule of law? Does IP matter, or have we entered an era post IP? I think a lot of folks in tech that I know in the Valley think we're in a post IP world. Oh, patents don't matter, trade secrets don't matter, copyrights don't matter. What's your barriers? Well, it used to be your barrier was my copyrights, my trade secrets, my know-how, my IP. If all that's gone, then yeah, barriers are gone, because anyone could steal from anybody at any time. But is that what the United States is supposed to be? Is it just a free-for-all to steal IP willy-nilly? I think it's a fundamental question, because when you listen to investors, they're like talking about AI rendering barriers of entry obsolete, which means stealing IP is the norm. Is that the way we're going forward? Like, isn't that what's happening, guys?
Yeah, well, there's a very famous salient scene in the show Silicon Valley called the brain rape scene. And if you don't know it, if our listeners don't know it, just Google brain rape scene Silicon Valley.
Not the best name, but yeah.
It encapsulates what you're talking about, and it's really funny, but really, really sharp in terms of understanding what is going on with these giant tech oligarchies that have trillion-dollar valuations and basically control the chessboard, right? No one else can really play the game because they control the chessboard. But the bigger thing, like as you guys were talking, I was thinking, Yoav, the guy who wrote *Sapiens*, the sort of famous book about human
Great book.
psychology.
Yeah.
I think he would write a great book about how studying leadership of the day and how that affects the entire brain culture and theft culture of every generation. Like, if you studied the days of, let's use US politics, if you studied the days of Truman or FDR or even more modern Clinton, and how does that affect everybody in the societal norm of what theft is and what it's okay to cheat and it's okay to steal, versus studying a little more modern politics, and the downstream effect and the pull is so strong. Like, when you read these crazy stories about people in the US government betting on Kalshi about things that they know from an insider trading standpoint, it gives you a little tip of the spear understanding of how crazy things are right now.
I guess they I guess the guy on the teleprompter who was betting on Kalshi while he
Yeah.
was sitting there ready to roll, um, he's thinking, well, this is a great case of the big thieves getting
Yeah.
away with it and the little thieves being hanged, right? He's living in a very permissive environment. Everybody around him is doing insidery
So why
stuff
shouldn't he?
and making
Right.
money. So he thought, oh, here's my chance for a little tiny piece of corruption. It was $100,000, probably was a fortune to the guy. And he risked it because he thinks that Trump is going to pardon him because he comes
Do you know
from
what?
a permissive
History doesn't
environment.
smile happily
So
on these periods of time. Eventually, you have huge populations who are being left behind.
yeah,
They get angry, and if there isn't the rule of law, if there isn't fairness and a sense of justice, people get really angry. The whole idea of the rule of law is to not have these things
yeah,
happen, is to make people feel you live in a fair and just society. So I think the U.S. is in a very interesting junction point. Does rule of law apply?
right. Well, if there is no justice, there can be no peace. So, if you live in a world without justice, then you're in a free for all where, the strong are going to dominate the weak and the rich are going to dominate the poor. And as you said, as the gap widens and the anger increases, it creates a tremendous amount of instability. And now we're in a situation where there aren't entry level jobs. You end up with a huge pool of unemployed young people, in particular, unemployed young men, which spikes the crime rate dramatically. That's every country. You see countries in Africa that are among the most dangerous places on earth. That same thing in Central
Charlie,
America is
my
because of
favorite topic, you and
unemployment.
Ted know this, one of my favorite topics is the idea of like autocracy versus democracy and how computing and computing governance leads us in these directions. The people behind some of the largest companies, some of them are overtly clear they don't believe in democracy. They really want to believe in a techno totalitarian regime that actually like runs the world. They view that a very small amount of smart people who they deem smart concentrate the wealth and power and control, and they should make all the decisions for everybody. There's some overt books by some of the people who are investors and backing some of the biggest companies in the world. This is their view, and they are challenging democracy. They're
Right.
challenging they're like the rule of law, the
Yeah.
courts, democracy. None of that matters. All that matters is like the might and strength and the oligarchs and the peasants.
It
And it
permeates all
never
parts. It
ends well.
permeates culture, right? It just
But it
permeates our
never
entire
ends
culture.
well. But
Yes. Permeates culture. So listen, we got another story to talk about that really is spot on related to this, which is Demis Hassabis and other AI titans got together to talk about AI regulation. So we're not talking about just him, although he gave the paper that ignited this particular conversation, but he's gotten together with Sam Altman and Dario Amodei, and they've all been sort of talking to Jim Vanderhei of Axios about what kind of approach we should take to regulation. And they have areas of agreement and areas of disagreement. The only one interested in having regulation that actually has teeth is Amodei, right? He believes the government should be able to do what it did to him on Fable 5 and hold back releasing AI that they don't understand and can't control and may impact not only national security, but also security on bioweapons and other
why is
weapons of mass
this even a
destruction.
question? Like the government regulates jets and aircraft through the FAA. We regulate medical devices to not harm and kill you when you go to the hospital. We regulate nuclear power. You can't have ICBMs in your backyard. Private companies cannot build ICBMs and launch them at their will. Like, why
Right.
is this a question? It's another extremely strategic capability that needs to look at the public safety. Um, the med tech industry, the pharmaceutical industry is very big. You can argue the FDA and so forth could be run a little better, but it's kept people out of harm's way for a long time. The time before the FDA was horrific for patients. Lots of deaths, companies having mass amount of irresponsibility. It works. Why is this a question? I don't even understand why the government is like not just, why are
But
they having
you
these
know
like
this,
like
Rony.
like
you know this, these institutions are crumbling at the seams. The things that, again, generationally were so important to our culture and to representing our culture as safety matters. We put a premium on safety. We put resources, dollars, and smart people in these organizations. That over the last, X amount of years has been effectively wrecked and destroyed, right? So the downstream effect of that is here's AI in all of its forms as this new sort of very powerful technology that can change a lot of things really quickly. And a lot of people that are really smart know better and are very nervous about it. But our institutions are not institutionalized properly anymore to take care of this anymore. We have weakened all those institutions.
You know where the blame goes? I mean, the Congress, House, and Senate in this country are where the largest power resides.
Yeah.
The executive branch was a smaller power, and the judicial branch was like a third afterthought. It was Congress. And basically, Congress is not doing its job. Let's just be blunt. If they did, it's very hard to not believe the will of the American people is to have unsafe things running around. I think if you like talked to 300 something million people and polled them, do you want AI running amok or do you want it to be safe and controlled and positive? They would all like want that, with very rare exceptions. That means their representatives need to make that happen, or they'll all
But
be
if
thrown out of the House and Senate and replaced with people who will.
Sam, well, we don't. Unfortunately, that's the problem with the system, is we don't throw people out of office because it's been gerrymandered to death. They don't happen to have any disagreement in their district. So the interesting thing is, of course, if Sam Altman were here, the first thing he'd say is, "Well, you want to protect national security? Don't let China lap
Where it
us
becomes
by slowing us
And
down
Jon
with
Stewart
regulation."
gave some great commentary on the Daily Show this week about what you're talking about, Rony, about the Congress and Senate, is that it's overrun with super old people, like super old people that are no longer functional
Yeah.
or relevant anymore and can't actually accomplish a job. Like they should have been retired a long time ago. Doesn't mean these people weren't like good, well-meaning people. It's just they've outlived their usefulness so effectively that these government organizations have basically become toothless now because it's a bunch of super old people trying to be relevant, and they're not relevant anymore. The commentary is amazing on it.
Again, the next time Congress goes to vote itself a raise, they ought to vote for some age limit. Just like, I mean, you can't fly a plane. You shouldn't be able to run
Cognition
the
limit.
government.
No, cognitive capability.
The level.
Like if you have the cognitive capability,
Exactly.
you could be really young and be cognitively impaired, right? So, by the way, Charlie, your thing about Sam, if Sam's listening, which I don't think he is, but just in case he is, if you want to support the U.S. government's strategic initiatives on, AI defensively, offensively, you do that as a defensive prime. You build an F-47, F-35, not making that available to the public. Those things are done as part of the DOW. If you want to then supply the population with something, don't give them nuclear weapons. You know what I mean? You're giving the public things that can actually do good for the economy, do good for people. You can't give the same thing to both sides, right? You don't give the F-47. You give someone we get access to a Cessna. We don't get to fly F-47s.
Correct.
You want to fly F-47s? Join the Air Force, join the Navy.
Right.
So I think there's like this misnomer that, if we want to keep up with China, sure, in a defense prime, go build that, go help the U.S. government, maintain parity. But don't make that available to the public. We don't give tanks to the U.S. public. We don't give F-35s and Black Hawk helicopters. If you're a public person, you get a Cessna 172. The argument is so bullshit about what you should give the public versus, of course we want to keep up with China. In these sequestered areas where whatever strategic offensive capabilities they have, keep that with the ICBMs and everything else. But everyone else, they don't need that. They need Cessnas. They need safe things,
Right. Your high school senior does not.
Suddenly, the three of us are now MSNBC co-hosts apparently this week.
I know. God, let's stop. Irena is here. Let's bring
go.
her in. Change the subject here.
Hey.
Hello,
Irena.
How are you doing?
All of your friends. Good. Well, this will be a fun chat among friends. So thank you for joining us this morning. Well, this has been this is long overdue. We've been doing this over 6 years, and you are, one of the thought leaders in our industry. So it is a pleasure to have you. And as I said, I'm sorry we didn't have you on
Okay,
sooner, but
great.
we'll make up for that today. So, Infinite Retina, a consulting firm that you have been working on with Bob now after writing your
It's
book
been
probably
closer
4 years
to
ago now.
6, actually, but we
Uh,
had a second edition, as you know,
oh,
because you wrote a
Jesus.
wonderful, you had a write up on it, which was about a year
Yes, I
ago.
did.
So,
Well, that's a great place for us to start. So, how is business? Is the XR part of it kind of being subsumed by AI at this point, or are there still a lot of opportunities for these technologies to
I think
converge
there's still a
and be
lot of
developed together?
opportunities for convergence. In fact, physical AI, which is the AI that is used by robotics, is basically spatial computing. So there's just a lot of different
Hmm.
terminologies out there that mean the same thing. Like Worlds that is out there by Feifei Li. She has World Labs. So World Models
Hmm.
is the same
Sure.
thing as
Yeah.
basically physical AI, and that uses spatial computing. So I think it's just another usage of spatial computing that the opportunities are in right now. There's been a little bit of lull, obviously, with the VR area, and AR is kind of in the back right now, waiting for new headsets to come out, and waiting, and hopefully soon, maybe within the next year and a half, there'll be an opportunity there, and that'll really explode. Yeah.
So, Irena, who are your big clients now? Who is covering the bills and asking you to work on things, and what are they asking you to do? I think our audience would be very curious. Like, what is the economic impetus of various companies in this field, and how are you helping them?
My biggest client has been IKEA.
Oh, interesting.
So
I love
they have
IKEA.
a
I'm a
labs
huge fan.
division. Yeah, they have a labs division there that's been going on now for a number of years, and they've been really in the forefront of driving spatial computing. So that's one. I
Yeah,
have
because
a
they have
law
an
firm
app,
which I
right? That you can put like furniture in your house and stuff and do all these things and see things like
yeah,
that.
but they also are doing things for the future. That they haven't included in online or to any of their consumers that they're working on. So
Hmm,
that's a big deal.
that's cool.
Yeah, I have a lot of small entrepreneurial companies that need help from me in terms of making money, getting VCs on board, which I know quite a few of, and also strategic counseling, which I've done a lot of in that area. So, I've been doing this stuff since 2016. So it's been a long while. I also have a law firm, which I can't give you the name of, but it's a very, very large law firm that I've been working with, basically doing XR surveys and figuring out what's going on in the industry.
That's great.
Well, first of all, Bob said two things to me that are worth discussing. The first one, very relevant to spatial, because he said several years ago, I think Tesla is one of the most valuable companies in the country because they have a perfect and perfectly updated
Right.
3D map of the physical world, which goes directly to how do robots like self-driving cars move through the world, right? The world is ever changing, so they have to update on the fly, right? And then the next car that comes along sees that the last car recognized that there's an obstacle or a change, and then it can continuously update. So that's an incredible asset that Tesla owns for anybody running a
Right.
robot out of doors. That spatial knowledge of the world would be very valuable. But here's my question: wouldn't the robot be scanning the world with its quote unquote sensors or eyes, if you will, and make its own 3D map of
Uh-huh.
its locality that way?
So their version of 3D maps is a little different than, let's say, Niantic Spatial, which became a new company about a year
Mhm.
and a half ago. Um, so basically, it's not the same. So it can be used for other things, such as Niantic Spatial for consumers. So it's made specifically for the robot car,
Mhm.
but it's good enough
Mhm.
for Tesla to use for other reasons. You can imagine what that could be. So yeah,
Well, it would be
it could
Optimus.
be used for Optimus. It's got the same kind of programming for Tesla. So Optimus really does need a lot of that, but it also needs more than just the gradients that are being used in 3D for the car. So it would need more of the world models that Fei Li is working on. That is really important.
So,
Yeah.
Irene, let me ask you this question. So, Alphabet, which owns Google Maps, they bought Waze, they have satellites, they have Google Street View, they have many robotics groups, they've got Waymos running around, they have people scanning the Earth. Why does anyone think they actually are going to overtake Google? And the reason I'm asking is like one of the people that ran all of this for Google, they had almost 3,000 employees. They were part of my Magic Leap board for a while. This
Yeah.
woman named Jen. And it's like, how does anyone even come close to the compounded, I don't know, now 15, 16 years of just massive data about the whole planet that Google has and the continuous detail and just the massive multitude of sensors and computers? Like, I wonder if Google's just sitting there watching people just burn money and flail and burn money and flail. And eventually they're like, okay, now that you guys have done all that, we're going to flex something out there. Because they seem to have everything you need, all the AI and background computing capability to have the entire planet, maybe not China, but everywhere else, just exquisitely mapped to a level where you're a robot, a drone, whatever. And then the stuff they give the US government, which is extremely high resolution detail. Like, why do people think they could come in and do that with like a 50-person company when I think what this problem is just massive scale, density of data collection, and all the computing to store it all and all the intelligence to process it? What do you know, this idea of like meshing the world, what's going on there? Because it seems like Google has such an overwhelming advantage. I don't get what's going on.
Yes, Google definitely has and has for a number of years if they decided to invest in it and put more people towards it. It's just a matter of focus. And I think Google has been basically an unfocused company for a very long time. They pick up on a few things to do, and then the rest of it just kind of lays there. So I think that's one of the reasons. And maybe when, spatial becomes even bigger than it is now, they'll start to realize how much opportunity there is there and put more people towards a team for it. But right now it's just sitting there. So I don't really have any good reason why they would do that. It's just that historically, Google has been very decentralized. And I'll tell you, I worked as a consultant a while back in 2005 in New York City at Google. And that was a wild and crazy time where I was inside and I could see how decentralized they were.
You think they're laying in wait, just like Apple will just wait and wait and wait? Like, Ted knows this. He worked really closely with Apple. They'll just watch everyone burn their money, make all the mistakes, wait, 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 and then come in near the very end and go,
Well,
all right, now that everyone's done all this stuff, figured out the market, we'll show up and roll over you like a steamroller. I mean,
Well, it's good that you brought that up with Apple, because there's been something not getting a lot of press, but really interesting, because the hyperscalers are having a bad year, right? Microsoft is off 25% because of their AI investment. The hardware investment is hitting all of the hyperscalers as analysts and others question the amount of CapEx and the rush to spend that CapEx. So there's been a lot of, and so Apple, so here's what's crazy, right? The past 2 weeks, Apple stock has been on a mad run. And the reason is
because they just
because they
waited
haven't
and
done
watched.
anything.
And this is we have a long provable history of Apple doing this over 50 something years now of
So,
wait, watch, learn, and don't spend a lot of money.
so people are rewarding Apple. We're rewarding Apple for doing nothing. And last year they were being hammered all over the place. And Apple had a
Yeah.
very flat year last year because they weren't part of the gang throwing
Right.
billions of
Very
Yeah.
dollars
insightful, Charlie.
at the hardware problem.
Well, I think, yeah, Apple has a history of doing this for sure. And I think they're excellent at it. And I can't wait to see what they come out with. I mean, I hear a lot of different things, but yeah, I think that Apple is much more sophisticated than Google ever was on waiting on something and then pouncing on it. And in fact, that's just the way they operate. I don't think Google has let's say, any kind of say into doing things that way. They don't have any strategy that says that they're going to do that. I think things just kind of happen at Google where they have little teams that sprout up to do things and then they just kind of die. So Apple is
Yeah.
definitely the winner in this kind of game that they have playing. Absolutely.
So yeah, remember Daydream? For years, they never met an XR project they couldn't kill. Now
Yeah.
they're doing Android XR. So we'll see if they can sustain their commitment. Because as we know, these things always take a way
Absolutely.
longer than you think. And Android XR, it's wonderful. At least the demos that I've had of it are pretty wonderful. But again, that's not the only condition necessary for a device to get uptake, right? And of course, I'm a sucker. I love this stuff. So it's not hard to get me to
Ready?
test something like Project Aura or the Quest 3 and not say, "Oh my God, this is so awesome." Where a normal consumer would be like,
Well,
"Why
there's an
why do I
interesting
want to do
provability
this?"
about all this is that companies like a Google and even Apple have such immense profit zones in certain veins of their business. I think Google is
Yeah.
one of, if not the most profitable company in the world, if you actually net out all of the profit from all the products that they make and what they
Yes.
deliver and how they make money.
Yeah.
So they have the ability to take things that for a normal company and a normal ecosystem would be considered like a wild hair, like, well, we'll put like a little tiny bit of money and resources into this and see if something happens. They can do it at such a massive scale for effectively forever, right? That they can keep pushing something into the world without having to worry, does it ever have any economic viability, because they have all these other economic zones. Facebook is a version of this too. And this sort of, and Irene, it'd be interesting for you to comment on this, the sort of XR follies of Meta, right? Now they found a really unique little micro success with the Meta Ray-Ban stuff, right? But arguably not really making any money at scale. But it's like a relatively successful little mini business for them. But it doesn't matter because they have these other huge profit veins that can feed these systems forever. So is that a good thing or a bad thing for us? I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on it.
It's really tricky. So if you have some people, okay, there's a number of ways of looking at this. It has to do with people that actually work for Meta and companies like that, and also the strategies that are put into and over those people to work into. So if the people that you have working at the companies, that's one leg, are extremely good and they know what they're doing, but they're put in a place where the strategy is not helping them do what they want to do. And I've known a lot of people actually at Meta that stopped working there for this reason, that they really wanted to go further and they couldn't go further because of what their boss told them they shouldn't do that, or something even on higher than that, telling them, no, we're not going in that direction. So it's the narrowness of scope that is actually keeping them from being successful. And not take, actually, I would argue that they're not taking enough of a jump into things. They picked a certain area that they think is possibly going to go into the future, is profitable, and they stick to that and then they stop. So it's a lack of imagination, I think, in Meta, that you don't find with Apple, which certainly has so much cash. You can't believe that it could do the same thing. You could vary a lot of money into projects and not have it worry about the company having any problem and just sit there and wallow. But that's not the way their strategy works.
Yeah, Apple is more judicious about these things. They look at things through a different lens. They don't try and buy the market. They try and watch the trend. They try and watch the human understanding of what products do people actually want, and then they start to lean into that with sort of a refinement strategy, right? It's very different than what Meta and even Google does. It's really interesting. Yeah.
Irene, question for you. My estimate, and I think you can do your own internet search, Meta spent 110 to 130 billion roughly on Reality Labs from, if you go back to when they bought Oculus onward, all the years cumulatively. And then at some point they were punching 15 billion or more a year, like, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 billion a quarter. How could so much have been spent with very little to actually show for it? When I think about what's working, okay, you didn't need 120 billion to do Meta Ray-Bans. We could have done that back in 2011. Google Glass did that. Could have just bought a pair of Ray-Bans, put a little tiny camera on
Right.
it. We got what is going on right now. Where did all that money go? I don't know if you, it's just like, I was competing with them at Magically, and they had orders of magnitude more spend per quarter than we did over a decade. And I'm just like, how could this be? Looking at the XR space, they're by far the biggest spender. Where did it all go? Like, what happened? Or is it going to happen? Is it sitting in a bunker somewhere?
Super Bowl
Like,
ads?
where's all this stuff? You pour 120 billion into something,
Super Bowl ads?
but 120
Underwriting
billion
hardware?
dollars is immensely big, right? Where
I
is
mean, there
all
could
that
have been.
money going? Like Irena, do you have any sense of, was it sprayed in 8,000 directions? Like, I just can't wrap my mind around how much money went in. And I'm looking at the output signal. I'm like, it doesn't make sense. Is there some amazing thing that's yet to come? Or,
Yeah.
because they've given us glimpse of the future. And I'm like, that did not cost 120 billion to make that thing, whatever you did. What's your take on it?
I think it's just complete mismanagement of money and not taking care of seeing what's happening, not following up with what the people in the projects are doing, and then continuously throwing more money at it and not following up. So I think it's just purely bad company mismanagement that you will see in a couple of other companies, and they don't do so well because they don't have as much money. If you do that with any other company, they'll go under. But with Meta, they won't
Mark's not
because this week.
stupid. I mean, he's been very smart at making Facebook profitable, and like,
Yeah, but
why
how?
is this one area just so like, I don't get it,
How
because
is
he's
he?
also,
I mean, how has he been that intelligent in making money? He hit upon an idea that worked, and then now it's worked for a very long time, and it's done very well. But in terms of having, I have to say, imagination and will to go further than most, I think he doesn't have that. I think he just comes up with an idea, and then he hires some people to do some research into it, and then they make a decision that they're going to go in that area and work in that area and throw money at it, and then it kind of just festers there. So I'd argue that if you look at people from Apple and Meta, they're incredibly different in terms of the management of products and projects. So I
but
wouldn't
how did the
say
Vision
that.
Pro come out? I mean, I know Ted and Charlie and I kicked it at South by, but the Apple people are brilliant designers. Why would
Yeah.
they come out with something so big and so heavy? Like, it doesn't make any sense. I know we beat this to death, but I'd love to get your take, because it was such an un-Apple move. Apple's so elegant.
Yeah.
They're so good at human factors. Like, what happened there? That was 40, 50 billion of money spent
Yeah.
at something that was like, you could have figured out in 2010 it wasn't going to work.
Okay, so I was following the Apple Vision Pro before it had that name back in 2019, and it went through hundreds of iterations. And I was saying to Robert and to any other people that I thought I could trust that, this isn't going to go anywhere. It's going to be a device that you can only use at home. You can't take it outside. It's going to be too heavy. It's basically a research kind of thing. And it actually turned out like that, kind of like that. But they
You
decided
called it.
to, yeah, they decided to go with it. First of all, they did throw a lot of money into it. That's one reason. But Apple has thrown a lot of money into other things and hasn't come out with it. But they're playing the long term game right now. Apple Vision Pro isn't dead at all. I know people in the company that are still working on it intensely. And it's just in terms of timing and then deciding to go back to working on it now that they've taken their area to go back into the glasses project. So I
They're
would
going
say
to build
within,
these now, or they are building
yeah,
these now.
yeah, absolutely. And they're fervently doing that. And that doesn't mean that the Apple Vision Pro is on the, on the
What's
fritz.
interesting about that is I don't think, maybe the three of you can give me another example of the clearest dichotomy of a success and a failure at the same time. So the success of the Apple Vision Pro is that they did figure out how to create an elegant wearable compute system. You are wearing a Mac on your face. The first gen product that's released, you put it on and it is remarkable. You look at it, it feels like a Mac, it functions like a Mac. You have these incredible hand gesture things. It's like a vision of the future, and it's
Yeah.
fantastic. So park that in a bucket of success. Now take potentially, other than probably call one or two other things, the biggest abject failure in hardware design and hardware understanding of Apple's entire history, and put it on the same line. So, like, here's this incredible software success for a first generation understanding of how to take their legacy of elegant compute and get it on your face. Amazing. And gigantic abject failure in complete lack of understanding of what would you actually need to make this feel good and right. Just like every other Apple product that feels so good in your hands and so right, it's a complete mistake, right? So
Yeah.
where does that energy, these like two competing energy fields, it's almost like watching a superhero movie. It's like, here's the good guys and here's the bad guys, and they're competing, and the good guys have done it so good, the bad guys have done it so bad, but the bad guys overtake because you cannot get past the bad hardware with the great software. Like, it's just unbelievable to me, how that all played out. It's just like I said, it's the clearest dichotomy of success and failure in one product I think I've ever seen.
You're actually describing how Apple actually works. They have competing teams all over the place that don't know what they're doing, at all. So they'll work on a project for like 6 months to a year, and there'll be 5 or 6 different versions of it, and then all of a sudden they picked a winner, and they don't even know what team it comes from and who's actually worked on it. So I would argue that there might have been a lot of siphoning off of information from one team into another, but not enough communication as to how the hardware is doing versus the software. Like you said, the software is absolutely amazing. And I got pulled into many hours of being on the Apple Vision Pro, and watching movies and doing all kinds of things. And I absolutely loved it. But you're right, the hardware is just not right. It's not meant for consumers. It's not even meant for
For
developers
anybody.
because developers have to.
It's
Yeah.
not meant for anybody. It's just like I said, it's just a failure. It's a giant failure.
Yeah.
But
So
the infrastructure behind it is amazing. Like the tech underneath the covers and how it functions as an operating system for your face is the best example I've ever seen so far.
So Ted, let me ask this question about Irena. This field that you study, we study XR. Let's leave the AI part for a second. Why is it so obscenely difficult? I've asked this question of others, but Apple spending tens of billions on Vision Pro, Meta spending 100+ billion on Reality Labs. What is so hard about this? Because you could go to space, you can go to Mars, you could build an OpenAI, and these things were conquered earlier and have been conquered earlier than this. What is going on here? What's your view? Why is this so obscenely hard?
there's so many areas that XR could actually work in. There's the enterprise level, there's the consumer level, and within the enterprise level, there's so many different areas that it could work in, for rehabilitation, for factories, for all those kinds of things, for training. And the consumer level, I think, is where the problem comes in. And the companies have been chasing a use for it. Now, you said, yes, of course, you could go to Mars, you can do all kinds of wonderful things with it. But for the average everyday person, since they don't understand it very well, I think there's not enough education, and it hasn't been, for whatever reason, by any of the companies into what XR could actually do besides gaming, which is a big portion of XR, but was never successful in that either. So if you flop on the consumer side, that's where Meta was going after, right? The consumers. If they had decided to go after the enterprise first, that would have been a different story. They would have put less money towards it, but they would have been more focused on what they're actually using the XR for. But diving straight into consumer without providing the understanding of what this product could actually do for you, and having incredible commercials on that, and having in-store demos for that, which they didn't for a very, very long time. There were no demos. You could go to Best Buy and there's nobody there to train you to see anything on XR. So I'd say that's the biggest reason. Even now, in terms of the glasses that you have on, it's a simple understanding of what they do. You put them on, and there's translation, there's figuring out where you want to go, there's answering particular questions, about which restaurant you want to go to, how long something is going to take to get to, and it's so simple and yet useful that people are willing to use that. They get it. It's very easy to get it. But even then, I don't see, millions and millions and millions of people jumping into buying Meta glasses, because they're just not enough. They're not, these glasses are not yet enough for anything. I mean, I want to see AR on the glasses. I just don't want to have, displays. That's right.
You want the display.
Yeah,
You want the display.
Yeah, I think
That's interesting.
Definitely going to be the enrichment for the glasses. And once you have the display, then it's going to go bonkers. I think people will really want to use it. But with the simple guides that the glasses provide you with, it's interesting. And for people who have disposable income to buy into it, they will. But if they don't, they won't. So that's not going to be like a tremendous product.
So this seems like a good place for us to wrap up the conversation. Irena, it was great to see you. Thanks for coming on the call. This was a great conversation. And as always, with friends and great guests, we always say we want to have you back. We want to continue this conversation. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
We'll see you back here next Friday.